Hi everyone, my name is Natalie. Today I wanted to do another video for Women in Translation Month, which is going on all through the month of August. And today I wanted to highlight some women who translate women into English. So basically I wanted to celebrate some of the translators that make Women in Translation Month possible for all of us who are English readers. Of course, I am Swedish, but I mostly read in English. So all of the translators that I will be talking about today are translators from different languages into English, and for the most part they're very well known and many of them are also really prolific. But I just wanted to highlight them and celebrate the work that they do, but also kind of put them on your radar because a lot of the time when you find a translator that you like or that you sort of come across once in a while, they are a great resource for finding more books in the same vein, because usually a translator chooses a particular type of story to translate. But all of the translators that I'm talking about here are translators that I've read something that they have translated and have really liked the translation itself, have appreciated something about the work that the translator has done, and whose name makes me more interested in reading a book regardless of what the book is, regardless of who has originally written the book or what the book is about. The translator's name alone is something that piques my interest. So it's kind of a favorite translator list as well. But let's get through the books. I would also like to point out that all of the specific books that I'm talking about here are also Women in Translation Month recommendations. So I would say I recommend strongly all of the titles that I'll be talking about today, and I will put all of the information about the translators, the authors, and the titles in the description in case you want to look into more information. So let's get into the books. The first translator that I wanted to highlight is Juliet Carpenter. I think it would be no exaggeration to say that she is my favorite translator, and this is partly due to the choices of books that she has translated, but also due to the style of translation that she does. She is a translator from Japanese into English. Japanese is the language that I'm most familiar with aside from Japanese and English, aside from English and Swedish, I mean. So I have a pretty good sense of Japanese as a language, and when I'm reading an English translation, I can usually tell I get a pretty good sense of how well the translation is done, or how accurate maybe the translation is done. And a lot of the questions regarding quality of translation is subjective. I realize this, and I have thought about possibly making a discussion video because I have a lot of thoughts when it comes to this. But I will just say as a kind of caveat in terms of Juliet Carpenter being my favorite translator, the reason for this is because she translates difficult texts into English. She chooses a lot of texts that have linguistics itself as a topic, and therefore the nuance that is required from a translator is that much harder, that much higher. And but also I feel like I can still sense the Japanese in her English translations. And for me, a good translation is something that still sort of keeps the original essence, the structure or the melody or something that hints at the fact that the text isn't originally in English. Like I said, I realize that translation, what people consider being a good translation is a subject matter that could be discussed for a long time. But putting all that aside, Juliet Carpenter is fantastic. She has translated, among others, Minae Mizumura and Shion Miura, two authors as well that I've really enjoyed. So I just wanted to share two here. An I novel by Minae Mizumura. This is one of her novels. I really enjoyed this one. There is a lot of identity related to language, which is something that comes up in, I think, all of her books to some degree. I also really loved Minae Mizumura's nonfiction book, The Fall of Language and the Age of English, and I think that was the book that made me completely trust Juliet Winters Carpenter as a translator. Another author that I mentioned is Shion Miura. This is The Great Passage, and this is a novel about a lexicographer, so there's a lot of linguistic elements in this, and again, I was really impressed with the way that the choices that she had to make and her reasoning behind them. I really, really liked. So Shion Miura, Minae Mizumura, two great authors to add to your Wit Month if you haven't read anything by them yet, and also Juliet Winters Carpenter. Put her on your list of translators to trust. So, before we move on from Japanese, I also wanted to mention Asa Yoneda. She has translated Yukiko Motoya's short story collection, The Lonesome Bodybuilder, and I really like this short story collection. I feel like it's a very underrated one, and I haven't heard a lot of people talk about it. It's very magical realism, weird stuff, and the imagery is so fun that I would really love to own a copy of it. And I know Asa Yoneda has translated several other books. One of them is Idle Burning, which is a more recent release, and I have also borrowed it from my library, and that is why I was reminded of her. But I also wanted to highlight The Lonesome Bodybuilder as a really fun short story collection that is well worth checking out. So the next translator I have is Deborah Smith, and she is translating from Korean into English. She's also the person who started Tilted Access Press, which is a publishing house specifically focusing on translated literature, world literature, and many of them being minority voices from different parts of the world. It's a really great resource if you're looking for authors to read for Wit Month, and in general if you want to read more of a mix when it comes to different languages and different countries in translation. It's a fantastic resource to Tilted Access Press. But Deborah Smith is the translator of Han Kang's books and also one of Bae Sua's books. So Untold Night and Day she has translated, and I loved this book. It's a very weird one. Bae Sua, I've read this and one of her other books, and they have sort of a surreal quality. This one is about a woman who works in a like a library for the blind, I think. Yeah, audio theater for the blind. But now the theater is shutting down and Ayami's future is uncertain. And I remember specifically that she's very much obsessed with a classic Iranian author. But yeah, this was a fantastic one. And also Han Kang, I've read The Vegetarian and The White Book. And The White Book is kind of a poetry collection with a very clear central focus of the color white, and it's a meditation on grief, on family, on connection, on culture. And again, this is one that I think if you decide to translate poetry from any language, then that's the kind of translators that's the kind of confidence that I really like in a translator, and she did it with grace. So yeah, I would definitely say that Deborah Smith is one to put on your list as well, and both of those books I really liked. Next we have Juliet Sanchez. Juliet Sanchez translates from Spanish, Catalan, and Portuguese, apparently. And the author that I read translated by her is Eva Baltasar. She has written a sort of loosely connected trilogy, starting with Permafrost and following with Boulder, and now the most recent release is Mammoth that has just come out, I think, in the beginning of August. I really loved Permafrost, did not love Boulder, but I really think that Eva Baltasar is a kind of up-and-coming voice in translated literature. She's a really interesting writer, and she writes kind of queer character portraits. And Juliet Sanchez, like I said, translates her, but also translated this one that I have on my Wit Month TBR, Dogs of Summer, by Andrea Abreu. And Juliet Sanchez also did a really interesting translator note in Permafrost. I'm not sure if it's available in Boulder as well, but she was reflecting on the process and the difficulties of translation, and I just remember that making a huge impact on me. And I really love when translators are very vocal about the creative process of doing translation, that it's not a technical thing only, but that it's filled with so many choices, and it's a complicated relationship to the original author, and I think Juliet Sanchez has a lot of interesting things to share about that. So the next translator I have is Anne Goldstein. She has famously translated the Elena Ferrante Neapolitan Quartet, and I'm sure she has translated the rest of the Ferrante books as well, probably, I assume. And she's a prolific translator. She has also translated, among other things, In Other Words by Jimi Lahiri, and this is, I think, Jimi Lahiri's first book in Italian, because Jimi Lahiri adopted Italian as her second language, and she started writing in Italian sort of in the midpoint of her career, and Anne Goldstein is the translator, like I said. I think the collection of Translating Myself and Others, which is a collection of Jimi Lahiri's essays, I think some of the essays have been translated by Anne Goldstein as well, but she has definitely translated this and potentially some of her other work from Italian. And we're ending on a high note with probably one of the most prolific translators that I know of, and that I absolutely trust, and whose name can make me pick up a book only based on the fact that she has translated it, and that is Megan McDowell. She translates from Spanish into English, and the first book that I read of her, the first book that I read translated by her is Fever Dream by Samantha Schweblin. I don't know if she has translated all of her other books, but definitely some of them. And this one is a fantastic experience. It's so interesting. It's a book centered around motherhood, very tense, very stressful, kind of nightmare. So a book that I really liked and that got me hooked on Samantha Schweblin's writing and imagery. So there's this one, and then also Megan McDowell has also translated Mariana Enriquez's short stories. So we have Things We Lost in the Fire and The Dangers of Smoking in Bed. Both fantastic books, both talking about women's place in society, violence against women. They are fierce, and some of them are very weird and out there, but I just love her imagination, her boldness as a writer, and yeah, again, like I said, an author that I've really enjoyed reading so far, and that I discovered through reading Megan McDowell's translations. So those are all of the translators and all of the specific books that I wanted to highlight today for sort of celebration of the people who make translated literature possible for us who read in English. I would love to hear if you have a list of your own who maybe a translator that you have come across a lot of the time that have that you might not have even noticed has translated several of the books that you've read. Do you have any translators whose books or whose translations you will read specifically or solely because they have chosen to translate it. I would love to know. I would say that I've only talked about women here, but I would also add Anton Hur to my list of favorite translators / people who piques my interest specifically because they have chosen to make it into an English, chosen to bring it to an English audience. But yeah, so that was all I wanted to say today. I hope you're having a fantastic August so far, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.